Friends, welcome to one of the UK's most iconic cities. I'm standing here on a beautiful autumn morning in the academic heart of the city of Oxford, here in the UK. As a Canadian, with my country just turning 150 years old, it's staggering for me to think that there have been people studying in this place, in this great city, for over 770 years more than my country has been in existence. The earliest recorded students here in Oxford date from the late 11th century, around 1096. And so it's amazing to think that people have been studying here for that long. The motto of the university is Dominus Illuminatia Mea, which means the Lord is my light. From Psalm 27 verse 1, the Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? And indeed, theology was integral to the studies here from the very earliest time and remains so to this day. I can attest to the fact that the university has earned its reputation not simply because of its gorgeous architecture, but because of the rigors demanded of study in this place. The Times World University Ranking Table put Oxford University at the head of its list this academic year and last, with Cambridge, Caltech and Stanford to follow this year. So why am I telling you this? Why share with you, seated there on the other side of the Atlantic, indeed on the far west coast of America, as you sit there in Washington State near Mount Baker? Why share something of this place and indeed of our story with you? Well, my name is Andy Turnbull, and about 20 years ago, this past spring, on March 31st, 1997, I came about as close to dying, not too far where you sit, from where you sit, near Mount Baker. And it was thanks to people, some of whom are sitting likely in the room with you today, that I'm alive. In other words, I wouldn't be a student here if you hadn't have been there. Julie and I have now been married for 17 years. We have 3 children, Judah, aged 10, Abigail, aged 9, and Anna, aged 6. And indeed, I wouldn't be husband and father to them here had you not been there on that day, March 31st, 1997. Many of you may not be familiar with the story. I won't go into the details, but just share the basic outline. After a full day of snowboarding and skiing with my dad and brother, with their knowledge, I ventured out of bounds just to the side of chairlift number 8. And the intention was just to be out of bounds for a short while in some sweet powder that had developed there, and then cut back to the run. I failed to cut back soon enough and ended up in a mess of snow and trees and came across these neon orange signs that said "Danger Cliff." At that point I should have hiked out, but instead noticed a way that looked like the way out back to the run to my right, and so I traversed parallel to the cliff edge through a gap in the trees, which looked like a path back to the run. But unbeknownst to me, I was headed into a place that you'll know as Gordy's Gulch, where a number of people have lost their lives and many people have been injured. Well, I quickly lost control. I tried to stop but couldn't. It was a thin layer of snow on top of ice. And I came up to the cliff edge and then fell 20 feet to the base of the cliff, where there was then a crevasse there, and which I plummeted into about 2/3 of the way down, falling 40 feet, a further 40 feet, before the crevice narrowed and I slammed in there. My snowboard wedged me in, keeping me from going all the way down. It was about an hour and a half until I was found by Randy Hook. Then commenced an incredible rescue effort. Randy was lowered down the hole with his crampons above my head. He sought to keep me conscious, talking to me. He sought to divert the water by using chunks of snow to keep the cold water from washing over me. They initially tried to pull me out of the hole, but eventually realized that the board was holding me in and they would have to dig. And so a massive digging effort was coordinated. Angelo Zopoulos played a key role at this point, as all of the ski patrol, and indeed many of the people who worked in the kitchen and worked the lifts, were summoned to the mountain to dig. It was about 5 hours until they got me out. Jim Milson, Kurt Miller, Frank Burns, Bill Boyd, and indeed Martha, who coordinated the rescue from the rescue shack where my dad and brother waited, along with Zop, who was coordinating a huge effort on the side of the hill. I was pulled out of that hole alive after having been in there for over 6 hours. By the time they got me to the parking lot, night had fallen. On the windy Mount Baker highway down to the Bellingham Hospital, Bill Boyd had to defibrillate me 5 times. I arrived at the hospital with a core temperature of 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And you'll know the severity of that. So needless to say, it was a miracle that I was found. It's a miracle that I was brought from the hole alive. A miracle that I lived through the night. And a miracle that was enacted with you, many of you, playing a central role in it. And so, as I searched online and looked at Google to find out what was there as the 20th anniversary of the accident came about, I came across an article by Maya Hunter in the Mount Baker Experience magazine, and there learned that on January 1st of this year, Randy Hook had passed away. I was so saddened to hear this. This led me to reaching out to Maya. It led me to reaching out again to Jim Milson. It led me to connecting with one of Randy's daughters, Michelle York. It turns out that my brother works for the publication company that publishes the Mount Baker Experience magazine, and this led to him being in touch with his editor, who then wrote an article celebrating and honoring Randy and telling something of the story in my life since the accident until now. And so we decided to reach out to Michelle and to ask if we were to raise some money, where would she want the money to go to? She decided that it should go to you, and we couldn't be happier to give the few funds that my dad, my brother, and I were able to pull together to you at the Mount Baker Ski Patrol. I'm not sure what it's like doing the work of Ski Patrol. I imagine there's a lot of monotonous days as you have to be on the hill in both good weather and bad, as you get to deal with wonderful and bright and able people on the hill, and some not so able and not so bright, not so kind people I'm sure you come across as well. As you tend to the lines, as you watch the conditions, as you help skiers who are amateur, I wonder if at times it could be monotonous, it could be difficult, it could be rather ordinary. But I wanted to share something of my story with you, just that you might remember that the day might come when someone's life absolutely depends on your actions, as mine did. I imagine in the work of Ski Patrol that avalanches only have negative connotations. But I wonder if you could keep in mind, as you think about the dangers of avalanche, as you do avalanche and snow control on the hill, if you could think of that avalanche metaphor in a positive way as well. Because you see, on that day, a number of people stepped into my life and they made an impact. They worked. At times it seemed futile. At times it seemed it would result in no good final ending. They gave of themselves to the point of exhaustion, not knowing what would come of it. But you see what's happened. I wouldn't be here had you not been there. Indeed, my children, Judah, Abigail, and Anna, wouldn't exist had you not been there. I wouldn't have had a chance to be a pastor for over 8 years and work at the intersection of the big questions of life and people's greatest needs in pastoral ministry. I wouldn't have the chance to study in this incredible place. Indeed, I wouldn't be here had you not been there. So I wanted to thank you. I wanted to wish you every best wish and God's richest blessing as you do your work. Would you receive all our greetings and cheers as you undergo your training, as I send them here from Oxford to you. I wish I could be there with you. And we'll leave some details if you'd like to be in further contact with me. I would love to be in contact with any of you. Some of you will have been involved on that day on March 31st, 1997. Others of you whom I maybe failed to mention, I would especially like to hear from you. But welcome contact from any who would love to be in touch. I would love to hear from you. But as the motto of the university says, Dominus illuminatia mea, the Lord is my light and salvation, and I believe he holds the mountain and indeed you himself in his very hand. And so may he watch over your way as you go into this season. And friends, I just wanted to thank you. I wouldn't be here if you hadn't have been there. And just think of the avalanche of influence that you can have as you impact one life and it goes on to impact so many others. That's an encouraging thought, isn't it? All the best to you. Bye for now.
I don't go to